the chains beneath neon skies. The night sky above the dark market was not like any other. There were no stars, only flashing neon signs and thick smoke floating in the air. Strange creatures moved through the alleys, buyers, traders, and slavers, laughing and shouting in many alien tongues. Cages lined the narrow streets, each filled with prisoners, aliens from every corner of the galaxy. Some were strong and silent, others whimpered like wounded animals, but most had given up hope long ago. In one of the cages near the end of the row, a girl sat alone. Her skin glowed faintly under the lights, a soft violet blue covered with bruises and scars. Her long dark hair fell over her face. Around her neck was a heavy metal collar. Her wrists and ankles were locked in chains. Her body was weak, but her eyes were still alive. She hadn't spoken in 3 days. Not since they took her from the desert camp. Not since she watched her sister get dragged away screaming. But tonight, her lips moved. "Please," she whispered. The sound was almost too soft to hear. It slipped past the noisy crowd through the cold air like a dying flame. She lowered her head again, her body shaking. The cold metal floor under her knees sent pain through her bones. The cage bars were covered in dust and blood. She knew no one would answer her. They never did. But not far from her cage, someone heard the whisper. A human man. He had just entered the market, hands in his coat pockets. His name was Elias Thorne, an ex-military engineer from Earth. He wasn't rich. He wasn't special. He had come to this planet looking for a spare fuel core and some food supplies for his ship. He wasn't looking to save anyone. He wasn't a hero. But when that whisper touched his ears, he stopped walking. The noise of the crowd faded for a moment. He turned his head slowly, scanning the cages. Most held silent figures with empty eyes. Then he saw her. She was curled against the bars, breathing slow and shallow. But something in her face made Elias walk forward. He stood in front of her cage for a moment, confused. She looked up, and for a split second, their eyes met. It was not fear in her eyes. It was something else. Hope. "Who is she?" Elias asked. The slaver standing nearby. The alien trader laughed, scratching his scaled skin. "That one? Useless, doesn't even speak. Been here 5 weeks. Didn't sell. Might toss her into the pit games next week. Or let the mercs use her for fun." Elias clenched his jaw. He looked back at the girl. Her collar blinked with red lights. Her thin arms were shaking. "How much?" he asked. The slaver chuckled. "You serious? For that trash? Give me half, a meal pack and 1 battery cell. Take her before I throw her out myself." Elias didn't speak. He just reached into his bag and handed over what was asked. It wasn't much. He could find food later. Power cells were cheap on the next moon. The trader unlocked the cage with a lazy grin. The chains fell off with a loud clank. The girl didn't move. Elias stepped inside. Gently, he knelt beside her and touched her shoulder. Her body flinched, but she didn't resist. He lifted her slowly into his arms. She was lighter than he expected. Too light, starved, weak. She looked at him again. "Why?" she asked in a soft voice. "Why help me?" Elias looked around the market. No one was watching. No one cared. He whispered, "Because I heard you, and that was enough." She stared at him, eyes wide. No one had ever said that to her before. He wrapped his coat around her and walked out of the market. Behind them, the cages stayed full. The lights kept flashing, the chains kept rattling. But for one girl, the night had changed, forever. The price of mercy. The air outside the market was colder than before. Smoke curled in the sky like ghosts, and the ground echoed with the distant sound of metal doors slamming shut. Elias walked fast, holding the alien girl close to his chest. Her skin was warm, but her body was trembling. She hadn't spoken since he carried her out. Her head rested against his shoulder, eyes half closed, lips dry and cracked. She was conscious, but barely. They passed several patrolling drones. Elias avoided eye contact, moved through the shadows, and entered a quiet side alley near his docked ship. Inside his ship, a small but sturdy freighter named the Marrowlight. He laid her gently on a padded seat. Lights flickered as he turned on the low power systems. "Water," he said softly, opening a storage panel. She blinked, confused by the lights, the gentle voice, the warmth. He handed her a metal flask. She took it with both hands, as if it was treasure. Her chains were gone, but the marks on her wrists were deep and raw. She drank in silence, too afraid to speak, too tired to ask questions. Elias sat on a crate nearby, watching her carefully. "You're safe here," he said. She looked at him with wide eyes. "Do you understand me?" She nodded slowly. "What's your name?" Silence, then in a quiet, shaky voice. "Kira." Elias leaned forward. "Kira," he repeated. "That's a strong name." She lowered her gaze. "Not strong anymore." "You're alive," Elias said. "That's strong enough." But just as peace began to settle in, a loud metallic knock echoed through the ship. Elias froze. Kira dropped the flask in fear. Another knock, then a voice. "Traitor, we saw you take property without full documentation. Come outside." Slavers. They had followed him. Kira crawled into the shadows behind a crate, panicking. Her body trembled again. "Please, don't send me back. Please," she whispered over and over. Elias stood up, pulled on his coat, and checked the hidden weapon holster under his arm. He stepped outside. 2 slavers stood there, armed, armored, and grinning like they already owned the place. "She's registered," one said. "You took her for trade, yes? But no mark transfer. That means she's still ours." "She's not yours," Elias said. "You sold her." "Not officially, which means we can take her back. Unless..." The second slaver stepped forward. "You want to keep her? Then pay again. 10 times what you gave. Real price." Elias narrowed his eyes. "You already got food and power. Then pay more," the first one hissed. "Or we drag her back in chains and you lose your pretty." "Pete." Elias looked at them, then back toward the ship. He didn't have enough credits. He didn't even have half that amount. They were bluffing, but they held weapons, and in this system, slavery was still legal. He had 2 choices. Walk away, or pay, with something more valuable than credits. Elias took a deep breath. "I'll give you a trade," he said. The slavers blinked. "What trade?" "My ship's fusion core," Elias said. They laughed. "Your main power source? Without that, you're stuck here." "I know." They looked at each other. Then nodded. Done. Inside the ship, Kira had heard every word. Her chest tightened. She ran out of the shadows as the slavers walked past Elias. "No, don't give them that," she cried. But Elias stopped her gently. "You're not going back," he said. "Not while I'm breathing." He handed them the core container. They laughed, turned, and disappeared into the fog, happy with their prize. Elias stood quietly. Kira stared at him, speechless. "You gave up your ship," she whispered. "For me." Elias looked at the now dim lights of the freighter. The backup generator kicked in with a low hum, enough to last a few hours. "I didn't save you to watch you get taken again," he said. She shook her head. "You don't even know me." Elias smiled. "Maybe, but I know what it's like, to be chained. Not with metal, but with memories." Kira looked into his eyes. There was pain there, old pain, but also strength. She sat beside him, quiet. For the first time in years, she felt human again. But far above them, in the orbit of the planet, a message was sent. Her escape had been noticed, and someone very dangerous had just received the alert. She wasn't just a slave. Kira sat on the edge of the metal bunk, staring at her hands. The ship's interior lights flickered, dimmer now, running on emergency backup. Elias moved quietly in the background, checking the ship's systems, tapping on a cracked control screen. There was no fusion core anymore, no fast travel, no escape, just silence and waiting. She looked down at her wrists, still red from the chains. The marks would take time to fade, but the memories, they might never leave. Elias finally spoke. We have 3 days of power. After that, I don't know. I can leave, she said softly. I don't want to be a burden. Elias turned to her, frowning. You're not a burden. You're the reason I did something right for once. Kira gave him a small, broken smile. You don't even know who I am. You said your name, that's enough. But Kira's eyes lowered. Her voice dropped. No, it's not. She stood walking slowly to the far wall. Her movements were careful, her body still weak. From a hidden pocket sewn inside her old torn dress, she pulled something out, a small crystal pendant on a frayed black cord. It shimmered in the low light with a strange glow. Not technology, not decoration, a royal sigil. Elias's eyes narrowed. What is that? Kira held it tight to her chest. My mother gave it to me, before they were killed. Who? Elias asked. She finally looked up at him. I'm not, just some market slave. I'm the last daughter of the House of Varel. The words hit like thunder. Elias blinked. House of Varel? That was one of the ruling families before the Skorath Empire burned the core systems. Kira nodded slowly. They didn't just burn our world, they hunted our bloodline. They marked us as traitors for resisting the Empire. I was 7 when the assassins came. My family was murdered, my sisters scattered. I was captured, sold, hidden for years under different names, until I ended up in that market. The pendant pulsed in her hand. I thought if I stayed quiet, stayed invisible, I would survive. But chains don't make you invisible, they just make you smaller. Elias leaned against the wall, absorbing her words. So, the slavers didn't know who you were? She shook her head. Not fully. They thought I was just another pretty alien girl with strange skin and markings. But if anyone finds out what this pendant means, her voice cracked. I won't be sold next time, I'll be erased. For the first time, Elias saw her not as a victim, but as a survivor of something much bigger than slavery. A living threat to a broken empire. He walked up to her slowly. That pendant, does it have a tracker? No, she said. I checked long ago. It's just a symbol. But if bounty hunters recognize it, as if the universe had been listening, a red light blinked on the ship's console. Incoming transmission. Elias rushed to the control panel. The signal was scrambled. Origin unknown. A mechanical voice crackled through the speaker. To the owner of ship ID Marrowlight, you have something that belongs to the Skorath remnant. Return her, or be hunted. Kira stepped back, panic rising. They know. Elias slammed the console shut, cutting the transmission. How? How did they find us? She asked. He pointed to the corner of the room. That water flask I gave you, I bought it in the same market. Damn it. It must have had a tracking chip in the casing. He grabbed it, smashed it open, and there it was, a small blinking dot inside the cap. They tagged me like cargo, she whispered. No. Elias growled. They tried to, but they're not taking you again. He picked up a blaster from under the seat and powered it on. Kira looked at him. You don't have to fight for me. I know, he said. But I will. She reached out, gently touching his arm. Then I'll fight too. Not as a lost daughter, but as someone who refuses to kneel again. Their eyes locked. In that moment, they were no longer savior and slave. No longer human and alien. They were 2 warriors, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. Hunted by her own kind, the desert, wind howled outside the ship, carrying with it the scent of metal, ash, and incoming danger. Kira stood beside Elias, watching the stars through the cracked window of the ship. They were too close to the old ruins of Outpost 9, a dead colony buried in sand, long abandoned, long forgotten. But tonight, it would become their only chance to hide. The enemy was coming. Not humans, not slavers, but her own kind. "I never thought I'd run from people who look like me," Kira whispered. Elias checked his weapon again, sliding in a fresh energy cell. "You're not running, you're surviving." "No," she said. "I'm being hunted. And this time it's worse." He looked at her, puzzled. "Why?" Kira turned, her voice heavy. "Because the bounty isn't just for bringing me back. It's for my death. Silent. No trials. No public capture." Elias frowned. "But I thought the Empire wanted royal blood for leverage." "They did. Once," she said. "But now, I'm a threat. I carry memories, codes, royal family maps, sealed access. The Skorath want me erased, but worse, some of my own people do too." Elias narrowed his eyes. "Your people?" Kira nodded. "The surviving nobles. They gave in. They submitted. They wear the enemy's badge now. They won't let me return, because I remind them of what they gave up." A sudden alarm beeped. Elias rushed to the sensor panel. 3 ships, incoming, stealth mode. One of them had Varel royal frequency codes, ones only her family had access to. Kira's face went pale. "They're here." Within minutes, dust swallowed the outside view. The ship shook slightly, then silence. Elias powered down all remaining systems, except for emergency oxygen and one hidden heat panel. He motioned to her. "We move now, into the ruins." They left the ship quickly, blending into the storm. Kira wore a torn gray cloak over her glowing skin. She had tied her hair back. Her pendant was buried beneath her shirt. They ran across cracked rock, ducking under metal beams and through broken structures of the ruined colony. Faded banners fluttered in the wind. Old machines lay rusted and dry. Then, voices. Elias grabbed her hand and pulled her behind a crumbling wall. A patrol moved past. 3 figures, slender, blue-skinned like her. Their armor looked ceremonial, but the weapons were deadly. Kira recognized the lead warrior, her cousin. Her voice shook. "That's Raylan. He used to carry me on his shoulders when I was little." "Think he's still friendly?" Elias whispered. Kira didn't answer. But her eyes said everything. She stepped out from behind the wall. "Raylan," she called softly. The warriors turned fast, weapons raised, but then froze. Raylan's eyes widened. "Kira," he said. "It's me." He stepped closer. "By the stars. You're alive." She nodded. "Why are you hunting me?" "I'm not," he said carefully. "I'm here to take you somewhere safe." Elias stepped forward now, blaster in hand. "Safe? Or to those who want her gone?" Raylan frowned. "Who is this? Another slaver? Another buyer?" "He saved me," Kira said. "He gave up his ship's core to free me." Raylan's face changed. "That was stupid. Now you're both targets." "I'm already a target," she said. "So why are you here?" "Really?" Raylan stepped closer, his hand lowered from his weapon. Then, one of the other soldiers raised her rifle. "No witnesses," the woman said coldly. "Orders from the council." Kira's heart dropped. A flash of blue light, a shot fired, but Elias shoved Kira down just in time. The bolt slammed into the wall behind them. Everything exploded into chaos. Elias fired back, hitting one of the warriors in the shoulder. Kira grabbed a fallen staff and spun to knock down the other. Raylan didn't fire. He stood frozen, shocked. "Raylan!" Kira shouted. "Decide, now!" He looked between her and the assassin who had shot. Then he turned and shot his own soldier in the chest. The assassin dropped, stunned. Raylan threw his weapon down. "I didn't come to kill you," he said. "But I wasn't strong enough to stop them either." Kira stared at him, hurt flashing through her eyes. "You came with them. That was enough." Elias picked her up. We need to move. More are coming. Kira turned once more to Raylan. You were my brother once. But now, you're just a ghost. They disappeared into the storm. Hours later, deep inside an old underground facility, Elias wrapped Kira's arm where she'd been grazed by a blast. You okay? He asked. She didn't answer. She looked at the broken mirror on the wall. Her reflection shimmered under emergency light. Once a princess, then a prisoner. Now, a hunted legacy. But for the first time in years, her voice held steel. They can send my blood to hunt me. They can send my enemies. I don't care anymore. She turned to Elias. They're about to learn what happens when you chain the wrong girl. Fire in her voice. The underground chamber was dark, filled with silence and dust. Broken cables hung like vines from the ceiling. Faded screens flickered weakly, displaying long-dead system warnings. Elias leaned over the control panel, trying to get a map of the tunnels. He was sweating, tired, his clothes ripped. Kira sat nearby on an old crate, a blanket around her shoulders, staring at her open palms. She wasn't thinking about the wound on her arm, or the bounty, or the cousin who betrayed her. She was remembering her mother's voice. One day, Kira, your words will be stronger than weapons, but only when you believe in them. And tonight, for the first time, she did. Elias turned to her. I found a route. Old supply tunnels beneath the Slaver district. We can sneak through them, maybe free some others along the way. Kira didn't respond at first. Then she spoke, her voice calm but sharp like a blade. No more running. Elias blinked. What do you mean? She stood slowly, throwing off the blanket. I'm done hiding, done waiting for someone else to save me. They want my silence. They want my bloodline dead. They want me afraid. Her fists clenched. But they forgot something. She stepped closer to Elias. I'm still alive. In the days that followed, something inside Kira changed. She walked straighter, spoke louder. Her fear didn't vanish, but she no longer let it lead her. They began moving through the lower cities, finding the forgotten ones, the ones in chains, the ones no one came for. Kira would step in front of them and simply say, I was one of Vayoi. You. They put a collar around my neck too, but I broke it, and I will help you break yours. At first they didn't believe her, until she showed the scars, until she showed the pendant, until they saw the fire in her voice. It began with 7. 7. Escaped slaves, humans, aliens, hybrids, all broken in some way, all lost. But something about Kira made them listen. They moved quietly through the market underbelly, disabling cameras, cutting communication lines, leaving behind whispers. They didn't call her princess. They called her the one who spoke, and her voice spread faster than the bounty. One night they reached a small holding cell deep inside the slaver vaults. Dozens of prisoners. No guards, just auto-lock gates. Elias worked on disabling the code while Kira stood before the bars. Inside the cells, eyes stared back, some angry, some empty. Kira took a deep breath and began to speak. You don't know me, she said. But I know you. I know the smell of rusted chains. I know how silence becomes a cage inside your head. She stepped closer. They told me I was nothing. A thing. But I was more. So are you. You think freedom is a lie? That escape is a dream? She looked behind her at Elias, at the 7 rebels. Then why are we still breathing? One of the prisoners stepped forward. What if we try and fail? Kira looked him in the eye. Then we fail as free. The doors clicked open. That night, fires lit the outer ring of the dark market. Storage units exploded. Holding pens were empty. Guards screamed in every language. Elias and Kira moved through the chaos like shadows, not to escape, but to strike. In the center of the slaver compound stood the Tower of Chains, a black metal structure where the wealthiest traders watched auctions from above. Kira stood outside the tower as alarms blared behind her. Her cloak was gone. Her bruises were faded. Her pendant was visible, glowing like a small sun against her chest, The guards pointed weapons at her. She didn't flinch. "I am Kira Varel," she shouted, her voice echoing across the plaza. "Last daughter of the house you betrayed. The slave you thought you erased." The guards hesitated. She kept walking forward. "You took my voice. But tonight, I give it back. To everyone you tried to silence." Blaster shots rang out. Elias rolled from behind a pillar, returning fire. The rebels charged, and the tower shook. Hours later, smoke rose from the burning compound. The tower of chains was gone. Not a single rebel was left behind. Kira stood in the ruins, breathing heavy, blood on her hands, not all hers. Elias stood beside her. "You did it," he said. "You lit the fire." She looked around. Her people, all people, were gathering behind her. Not because she was royal, but because she was real. And somewhere, in a high-orbit station deep in enemy territory, a general of the Skorath Empire watched the footage in silence. He zoomed in on her face, then whispered, "Find her. And this time, don't bring her back." The last collar breaks. The skies above the burned market turned orange with smoke. The tower of chains was nothing but black rubble. Rebels moved through the shadows, freeing the last cages, smashing scanners, carrying wounded on makeshift stretchers. But something was wrong. Elias was gone. Kira stood at the edge of the old compound, her boots sunk in ash, her hands trembling. But not from fear, from fury. He was with her during the last attack. Then, smoke, shouting, a flash grenade, and he vanished. No one saw where he went. No one saw who took him. But Kira knew. It wasn't the slavers. It was the Skorath. Deep underground, in a hidden chamber beneath Outpost 9, Elias hung from magnetic cuffs, blood on his face, skin bruised. But his eyes, sharp and unbroken, a tall, masked interrogator walked slowly in circles around him. "You chose her over your own kind," the voice said. "Cold, robotic. A slave, a traitor." Elias smiled through the pain. "She's more free than you'll ever be." A fist cracked across his jaw, but he didn't break. Back at the rebel camp, Kira stared at the pendant around her neck. It was cracked now, half of it, burned in the last blast like the house it once represented. It was broken. A young girl approached her, one of the freed hybrids. Barely 16. "He saved me," she said softly. "Your friend. He pulled me out of the fire." Kira didn't speak. She walked to the center of the camp. Dozens of eyes turned to her. She spoke only one sentence. "We're getting him back." The problem was, the place Elias was taken to didn't exist on any known map. But Kira remembered an old code phrase her mother once said: "The Empire hides its monsters in the mouths of dead gods." And on the edge of the system, there was a place called Solara's Mouth, a deep crater inside a hollow asteroid said to be cursed. No colony, no trade, just sensors and silence. That's where they would take him, because no one ever came. Back from Solara, Kira gathered a team, 5 rebels, all willing to die for the cause. One ship, old, battered, fixed with parts Elias once scavenged himself. They flew silent through the asteroid belt, engines off, riding on gravity pulls. At the edge of Solara's Mouth, they saw it, a fortress built into stone, black walls, no windows, no lights, no mercy. Inside, Elias was barely conscious now, but even half awake, he smiled when he heard the explosion. Boom. Another one. Screams, blaster fire. Then, her voice. "Step away from him or I burn this hole into the sun." The door exploded inward. Kira walked through smoke and flames wearing a patched-together rebel armor, holding a plasma staff in one hand, and her broken pendant in the other. The guards aimed at her, but hesitated, because she wasn't alone. Behind her, the rebels stormed in, shots fired, Metal cracked. Bodies dropped. Kira ran straight to Elias, slicing through his cuffs with the staff. He dropped into her arms. "Miss me?" he whispered. She smiled through tears. "You idiot. You weren't supposed to be a hero." He coughed. "You rubbed off on me." They didn't run this time. They fought their way out. Kira led them through the prison tunnels, triggering every alarm on purpose. She wanted them to know. She wanted them to hear it. The voice of the chained girl who came back, not to beg, but to burn. At the exit bay, a Skorath commander stood waiting. His armor glowed red. His voice was sharp. "You started a fire you can't control." Kira stepped forward. "No," she said. "I started a fire that will never die." She threw the pendant at his feet. "Chains don't scare me anymore." Then Elias shot the control panel. The ceiling collapsed between them and the commander, and they escaped into the stars. Hours later on the ship, Kira sat beside Elias. He was wrapped in bandages, resting. She looked at him, her voice soft. "I used to dream of someone coming to free me, but no one did. So I stopped dreaming." She looked out the window, where stars stretched forever. "But now I know. I wasn't waiting for someone to save me. I was waiting to become the one who saves." She turned to him, took his hand. "No, more collars. For any of us." And for the first time she smiled like a leader, not just of rebellion but of the free. From chains to stars, the stars above were endless, cold, quiet, uncaring. But aboard the stolen warship, the Emberlight, something had changed. For the first time in years, someone was speaking the truth. Her name was Kira Virel, and her voice was being broadcast across all outer systems. The bridge of the Emberlight was dim, lit by red alert lights and humming panels. Kira stood before a small camera terminal, face calm, eyes burning with purpose. Across hundreds of planets, thousands of colonies, her voice echoed through hidden radios, black market screens, prison cells, scavenger fleets, and rebel camps. "My name is Kira. I was sold like an object, beaten, silenced, chained. But I'm not a slave anymore. And I know you're out there, others like me, forgotten, afraid, waiting." She held up the cracked pendant. "This used to be a symbol of royalty. Now, it's a reminder of survival. If you're hearing this, you are not alone. Rise." Across the outer rim, everything paused. A mechanic dropped his tools in shock. A girl in cuffs blinked through tears. A former soldier, now a drunken exile, whispered, "She made it." The slaver syndicates panicked. Some shut down their markets. Others doubled their security. But it was too late. The spark had already become a wildfire. In the control room, Elias stood beside Kira as the broadcast ended. "You just lit a match. The Empire can't put out," he said. Kira exhaled. "Good." He smiled. "So, what now?" She looked out at the star map glowing before them. "There's a mining colony on Helvar Prime. Thousands still in chains. We go there. We break them." She turned to him, fierce and soft all at once. "We keep going until there's no one left in chains." But the Empire was not sleeping. In the capital station orbiting the dead planet Avex, Skorath High Command watched the footage. The general who once ordered Kira's death now stood silent, staring at the image of her face frozen on the screen. "She's not just surviving," he said coldly. "She's building something." An officer nodded. "A rebellion." The general turned, eyes narrow. "No, a legend. And legends must be crushed before they grow wings." Back on the Emberlight, the crew prepped for warp. Kira walked alone down the hallway to the old storage bay, now turned into a resting area for the rescued. Dozens slept in peace, some huddled together, others smiled in their sleep. She sat down near the youngest, a little alien girl with silver skin and wide blue eyes. The girl stirred. "Are we safe now?" she asked in a tiny voice. Kira reached out and tucked the blanket around her. "No," she said gently, "but we're free, and that's the start. Later, as they neared Helvar Prime, alarms began to beep. 2 enemy ships, bigger, faster. Armed to the teeth, Elias took the pilot seat. "They're coming fast." Kira didn't flinch. She looked at her crew, no longer scared refugees. They wore makeshift armor, held stolen weapons, and carried the fire of hope in their eyes. "We don't run," she said. "Agreed," Elias replied. "But we don't win in a fair fight." She smiled. "Good thing we don't fight fair." As the enemy ships closed in, Kira gave the command. They fired decoys, launched EMP bursts, split into 2 escape pods to draw attention. And then, while the enemy focused on chasing ghosts, Kira and Elias infiltrated one of the ships from below. Hand-to-hand combat, blaster fights in narrow halls, explosives rigged near the engine. They fought like rebels. They moved like ghosts. They struck like fire. 30 minutes later, one enemy ship exploded in orbit. The other fled in panic, and the signal Kira left behind. A single message burned into the comms. "Your chains are not strong enough, we're coming." Days passed. The name Kira the Unchained spread like wildfire. Graffiti showed her face on broken walls. Markets whispered of her arrival. Colonies once dead with silence began to chant again. And wherever a slaver set foot, they looked over their shoulder, because she could be anywhere. On the balcony of the Emberlight, under a field of stars, Elias stood beside Kira. He looked at her, not like a soldier looks at a leader, but like a man seeing a light in darkness. "You started this for survival," he said, "but now it's something else." Kira nodded. "A fire they can't kill." "And you?" She turned to him, soft for the first time in days. "I'm not the girl in the cage anymore, Elias." He stepped closer. "No, you're not." Then, in silence, he reached out and gently took her hand, not to save her, but to stand with her. Far across the system, under alien skies, a slave heard her name. He raised his chained hand and whispered back, "I believe you." And just like that, galaxy once ruled by fear now trembled at the sound of her voice.